Welcome to another episode of Monster Monday from the Ready to Die channel. This series explores the design of a creature I have built for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. The stat block for this creature can be found over on the Monster Monday blog, as well as the Twitter and Discord, all of which are linked below. Guess who's back with a bevy of beautifully built beasties for my buds. I hope you all had a happy new year and that you've been sticking to your resolutions. My resolution is to complete one page of the Hunter's Handbook per day and get some more original monsters out this year. If you have any that you are working towards, feel free to share them. Flying in on a frigid flurry of frosty feathers is this week's monster, the Skraev. Hailing from the world of Dauntless, I actually designed this creature for a campaign I was running. But then I figured, hey, might as well kill two boreal birds with one stone, and included it for Monster Monday as well. The basic Skraev occupies levels 11 through 14, and I went for the lower end here, largely to fit the creature into my campaign, and a lot of my initial design was actually based on the owlbear. However, I actually found I wasn't quite giving the Skraev the credit it deserved, which led to a few design changes that we'll get into as we go. Being a burly blend of bird and bear, this beastie brawler uses an extreme strength bonus, letting it dive into the thick of it and do some damage. A high constitution helps it hang in there, and hopefully make it back out afterwards. It also uses a moderate wisdom, which is kind of inspired by the legacy of Pathfinder, and by extension, D&D. Where the spell to increase one's wisdom in the past editions was Owl's Wisdom. It's a goofy little justification, but conceptually I liked it. Finally, I settled on a low dexterity between it being a bear and described as a poor flyer. It has slightly below high perception as it is derived from a pair of predatory creatures, and then for its skills it has a low acrobatics for the little bit of flying that it does, an extreme athletics to carry its physicality, and then a moderate intimidation to terrorize its targets. The Skraev uses a high armor class, protected by its feathers, fur, and hide, rather than its agility or ability to evade attacks. Its hit points are at the low end of high for its level, reflecting that high constitution it uses, which is also apparent in its high fortitude save. Following a similar pattern to its ability scores, the Skraev has a moderate will save, and then a low reflex bonus. As a frost behemoth, it is immune to the cold and its ill effects, but has a moderate weakness to fire damage. To further represent this adaptation to the ice and snow, it has snow vision, which allows its gaze to pierce snowfall, and frigid flurries, while ice stride carries it securely across ice and snow, without any chance of slipping or sliding. On the offensive front, the Skraev strikes use a high attack bonus to sell it as a physical threat able to lay out heavy blows. Its agile talons deal slightly below moderate damage, but the real terror comes from that high damage of its beak, which hit for a pretty nasty critical hit during the monster mash. The first actual ability we'll look at for the Skraev is its Freezing Gust. This is intended to represent the line that the Skraev can throw out from its wing, which can freeze a hunter in place. In my initial design for this ability, it could affect a 60-foot line or a 30-foot cone, which was meant to represent the spikes of ice it can pull from the ground. But at some point, I decided that I disliked the homogenization of abilities, and so I ended up separating the two effects. This is still the main effect, dealing limited use area damage at a high DC, while also carrying a couple of crippling conditions. Creatures that fail are partially frozen, leaving them immobilized and off guard, though they can escape with an attempt against a moderate DC. Further reflecting the icy effect is the slowed 1 condition on a critical failure, which we did have a player get hit by, again, during the monster mash. The ice spikes of the Skraev became erupting ice, having a short-range cone that deals unlimited use area damage at a high DC. I wasn't content with this being only a damage effect, and so I leaned into further slowing effects with creatures that fail their save being knocked prone, leaving them vulnerable to the Skraev. And the Skraev can take advantage of that through its unique reaction, Chilling Advance. This is just me having fun with reactions while also keeping in concept with the Cryo Critter and helping out the Skraev's action economy. A lot of its attacks require 2 actions, meaning that the Skraev either needs to be in the thick of it or spend actions closing the distance since it lacks other range attacks. This reaction solves that slightly, letting our violent villain advance upon vulnerable victims, taking advantage of their trepidation to strike terror in their hearts, and leave them even more vulnerable. The last of the Skraev's more fantastical features is its Howling Winds, which I took some major liberties with. This is meant to represent the tornado that the Skraev launches in a line within the game of Dauntless. It's just a simple traveling whirlwind. But here I made it into something that it manifests, and can then maintain by spending actions to manipulate the Aether sustaining it. As an area effect that can keep up and move around to where it needs it to be, these howling winds deal unlimited use area damage and use only a moderate difficulty class for the saving throw. They do also have some additional effects. The difficult terrain they provided proved effective in the mash, and the concealment is based on the snow and debris kicked up by the whirling winds. We're not quite through the Skraev's arsenal, with the final ability being a bit more mundane. It's Vicious Pounce. Now, the Skraev isn't a strong flyer, but every now and then it will lift into the air before slamming back down in a powerful impact. I did want to do something other than an area effect though. My design for this creature already included a lot of them. With that in mind, I designed this action to have a strike at the end of it, allowing the Skraev to fly twice beforehand given its low speed. Then, if there's prey within reach, it can attempt to tear at them with its beak, rending flesh and leaving a nasty, bleeding wound. Now before we quit this cold turkey, we need to discuss the gear made from it. I was personally inspired by the Winter Gale weapon, which features the Frost rune as a cold weapon and has the thrown trait to the axe for the special attack of the axes in Dauntless. Dodging while wielding a Skraev weapon leaves behind a cryomine, which was a little difficult to figure out how I wanted to do. I ended up settling on being the weapon's activated effect and proccing off of a strike. It creates an ice flick snare in the place of a cryomine, which then uses a difficulty class more appropriate for the level of the weapon. It's good to be back, but I'm going to have to wrap it up there because that covers the Skraev. A foul and frigid foul, this frosty fiend freezes foes in a flash of fearsome flurries before flensing their fragile flesh. I think one of the main things that the Skraev does is it allows you to carry the classic concept of the owlbear into higher levels of play. And with that idea in mind, I might just take a crack at the Shrike, the non-elemental version of the Skraev, which I think may just have enough in its kit to be distinct from the owlbear. Let me know what you think of this creature and what others you would like to see in this upcoming year. If you want to check out the other monsters I've done, or even the stat blocks and other versions of this monster, head over to the Monster Monday blog or Twitter linked below. Thanks for watching, and have a monstrous Monday.